Hi people, I hope you're doing good. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the brand new song, Such a Shame. It's a collaboration between myself and Katie Gibson. And you're listening to the Soulful House Mix, which is really killing it at the moment on Traxsource, so thanks to everybody supporting.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. It's such a shame. You're not quite the man that you say you are.
So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to deconstruct the track. I'm going to show you all of the instruments used and the thought process behind this. I'm also going to show you the vocal processing, the layering, and then also the mastering as well. So we're going to spend some time with this, and it feels kind of criminal actually to be talking over such incredible vocals. I'm just going to leave the chorus on its own.
You had me shook. I was just a number in your little black book. It's such a shame. I've got to let go. Baby, my dignity could never be sold. It's such a shame.
Okay, so we'll start somewhere. I'm having a think about it, but I'm still vibing on the track. I've heard it so many times. It's always a pleasure. There are some other mixes as well, so go to traxsource.com and go and check those out. Now I'm going to stop this here. So this, I'll tell you a story. This was created, the backing was created when I had COVID in Christmas. All right, so I caught COVID on the 24th of December, so right just before Christmas itself. So unfortunately, I spent Christmas in isolation away from my family. But it gave me time to work on some ideas, and this was an idea that I knocked up. Truth is, I actually performed the majority of the musical elements here using the typewriter keyboard on my Mac. So this was without any decent MIDI gear. I was stuck in a room on my own with my laptop. And that's incredible when I look back on this, but it was just the fact that I had focused time and I put the work in, and it just goes to show that you don't need expensive hardware to be able to make decent music. And this is a very musical track. Now, of course, there are some elements that are not programmed, and I'll come to those, but that's what's happened since. In fact, there's one key element that's not programmed. And anyway, the demo itself I sent away to Kaylee, who is someone that I had remixed before. I thought her voice would work perfectly on the track, so I sent it to her. And then we had a period of back and forth where she would sing stuff and then I'd place it roughly, then we'd work on getting the structure refined, and we've ended up with a structure. And the structures between the mixes are slightly different, so the arrangement on here is very specific to this Soulful House mix. So where do we start? Let's take a look. There are some drums here. There's a lot of elements going on here. So I think what I'll do is I'll start with the drums. I'll show you all of the different elements and what they bring to the table. So I'm going to solo the beats all together first. So let's break these down into the individual tracks. So I've got a track called Beats. This is a drum rack with Wave Alchemy drum samples. So this was a process where I went through the samples that I had. I selected a drum kit by combining those together. I also worked on some processing, so you can really see that here. Let's take a look at the kick. I'm going to take off the processing on the saturator. So it's adding some subtle distortion, which I felt really works nicely there. All of the drums are going through this drum bus. So let me just take off the solo on that and let's have a listen to these without the drum bus. So this is all of those drum elements. And then I'll turn the drum bus on at bar 25. So it's adding a subtle kind of roughness that I really like there. I wanted to get this sounding slightly away from those cleaner drum elements that I had before. There is also an instance of the BX console, the AMEC 9099. Now, I use this a lot, and every now and again, you'll be able to pick it up from Plugin Alliance at a really good deal price. And I got it really cheap. I think it was something in the region of $30. And so this is, for me, this is amazing. So I love the sound of this thing. And I use this on my individual tracks, and then I bus it together at the end. So in essence, it feels to me like an analog desk. That's the whole purpose here. I don't always use all of the dials or the switches or anything here, the knobs. Literally, I'll use it just to add some kind of analog color to the sound. So the drum sounds, let me just go through some of the others here. Let's solo this one. It's another kick every now and again. Very subtle. In fact, all I'll do is I'll put both of those together. And let's take a look at the programming so you can back this up as well. Let's come back so you can see it. So there's that short little kick, heavily swung. And the other elements here. So there's a clap, kind of snarey clap. Another very short kind of clap, sort of snarey kind of sound. Just filling in little gaps. Got real kind of nice subtle swing to it all. There's an open hi-hat. And a little shaker, very, very short. So they're all coming from that one drum rack. So that's there. Then what I did was I layered on top some claps. So this is to give it more of a kind of organic human kind of feel. Very subtly in the background, by the way. And you hear there's a difference in tone between these. Now this is coming from, this is an instrument in the Contact collection. So it's part of the Complete, and this is called Drum Lab. And it has actually, as you can see here, disco claps. It's a preset. And the fact is that there is a difference in how these sound. So they've recorded lots of different claps. So it's not exactly the same sample played over and over again. There's an organic feel to those. And that was a deliberate choice with that particular preset. Now, also there is a break, a drum break, which is very reminiscent of a classic old break. I think it was the Think break. This comes from Rhythm Source, which is a Native Instruments machine expansion. It's got some fantastic breakbeats, almost worth the price alone just for those breaks. Then some complementary hats. And these go kind of with the polysynth chords that you'll hear later. All of these elements together. So they work really nicely as a composite. And then there are some drum fills at the end of the 8-bar. And so that's just to indicate something new is coming. But I added on top actually these hits, these Vox hits. I'll bring these in so you can hear that. And they've actually become very much a hook in this song. And there's lots of kind of earworms in this track, you know, lots of little details that do make a difference. And it's one of those aspects that I think has enabled this to become one of those songs that you can listen to over and over again and still enjoy it, you know. It's a real testament to a great song as well in terms of the lyrics and the melody that Kaylee has written for this. So that's the beats. I'll just tuck these away. Then we've got something really important, which is the bass line. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier. This is a recent addition. And what happened was I played in a MIDI bass line using a Contact instrument. And it sounded great. I've got to say, it did sound really, really good. But what it didn't have was the human variations. So what I did was I sent the MIDI data and the complete structure and highlighted all of the points where I wanted change to occur to the bass player, and he played it in, and it came out actually fantastic. What you can see here is chops from a take. Some of this is continuous, but others I had to arrange how I wanted them. Okay, so there were certain sections that I felt would be better in different parts. So there's been a certain amount of rearrangement that's happened since, but that's all to be expected. That's not anything negative on the bass player whatsoever. But have a listen. Let's hear the bass on its own. And you can see that I've worked a lot with this EQ. Certain areas here I felt when it was in the mix were too present, so I've chopped them away. It's running through a compressor here, and this is an Arturia version of the old classic 1176, and that's working quite hard. Then I've got the track spacer, which is used so that when the kick drum is hitting, it's providing some kind of frequency dependent ducking, so it's allowing that kick to cut through better. And then I've just rolling off some of the bass on the channel EQ here because it felt like it was a little bit too heavy to me. Let's bring that in with the beats. And there is a progression with the chords, and there's almost like a kind of disco kind of feel to the bass that you'll hear. But it's an amazing bass line, very much of a signature kind of part of this song. I'll try and find that disco part. It's over here, so 77. There. Now there are some other musical elements that are occurring at that time. I mean, particularly what it is the chords. So I'm going to bring these in. Let's just go back on that section we listened to, in fact. So there we go. Now, we're moving on to these chords, and this is interesting because, this is going to reveal, the truth about, as I said, when it was Christmas, I was using the typewriter keyboard. I wanted to get two distinctly different chords. I didn't want them to be the same all the way through the song. So if you go and take a look down here on the left-hand side, you can see that there is the chord device in Ableton. So I was using one finger to play the chord on the typewriter keyboard on the actual Mac laptop itself. This is a particular configuration, so it's +4, +5, +9, -10, +7. Look at the other one. There are some subtle differences, +4, +11, +2, -3, +7. So although the notes are the same, in terms of the MIDI programming, the end result is different. So that was deliberate. I wanted a different feel, but still to echo what I'd already had before. So it's almost like someone else is playing different chords. And that's done with two distinctly different instruments, but grouped together. And the instrument itself is an Arturia version of the Yamaha DX7. This is the preset ROM1A 11-E Piano 1. So that then is running through some EQ to roll off some bottom end, then through this amazing Arturia phaser. There's something I really love about this. It sounds really old school. So this is adding movement to the sound. So what I'll do is I'll play this for you so you can hear it in isolation first. So let's go to this track here. Let me just make sure I've got the right instance. Here we go. I'm going to take the phaser Bitron off. See how that's really static? But then when I put the Bitron on, it's like a very subtle kind of LFO wah-wah. But I felt it really suited the mood of the track. And what I've done is I've echoed that on the other part here. So let's go to this one. There we go. So it creates an alternative mood. And this is backed up by some other elements. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring these in. So there's a couple of synthesizers. There's a string as well. And let's listen to that now. The high string that's coming in there is a contact instrument from the factory library. It's called the String Ensemble. It's just a sustained note. The mini moog is coming in the second. There we go. Arturia mini moog. Patch called Fifth Dimension. he says. Now, the one that just came in there is the 5th dimension, so I'd selected the wrong track. Let's just backtrack on that. So that's a 5th patch. You can hear that. That's why it's called 5th dimension. But let's also take a look at the other instrument here. So this is the megapulse sound. And I love that. That's just kind of like to resolve things and also to create the next section. So this Moog chord here, I'll show you the patch. It's called Big Ninth. And that just sounds incredible. I'm just going to solo that entirely. Let's do that. Love the sound of that thing. That's just amazing. So let's just put this in context, right? So let's come back. Let's go to, let's bring those vocals back and all the other elements.
I'm trying hard not to reminisce about the way we kissed and all of the other things. I'm trying hard to understand the reasons why you held my hand and the way you did those things you did to me. I'm so upset. Yeah.
You'll notice that this synth is panned to the left, this one to the right. Okay, so you've started to hear some other musical elements creeping in. I'm going to come back to those fairly soon, but let me just show you another one of these kind of earworm things. And this is this instrument here, the lo-fi glow notes. There we go. That's so subtle. And it's almost like your ears subliminally pick up on this. This is panned to the left. It's an instrument from Native Instruments on the Lo-Fi Glow collection. So it says here, Misty Sky Hit. And that works really well with the synth brass. Let's just backtrack on this as well. The synth brass is a Juno 6V from Arturia. Classic Road it's called. And that sounds really, really lovely and warm and authentic sounding. Now, I've also got a couple of kind of classical type elements, and you heard those earlier. So I've got cellos. I've also got a kind of trumpet thing going on here. And you hear that? There's a break every now and again from the vocal, and the trumpet sits in that space. So let's go to the cellos. Let's put the chords on. And I wanted to get a kind of romantic, almost James Bond, John Barry kind of flavor to it. So the patch that I used there was another Contact one. And this is the factory library again. That's a cello ensemble. I quite often use the cello sound because it's got this warm richness to it. And it's not the obvious kind of violin string ensemble thing that you'd go for. So that's that. And then this kind of brass melody. And this is coming from another Native Instruments library instrument. This is called the Session Horns, and it's using the single articulation patch. And this just sounded lovely. You know, there's something really kind of old school and traditional about it, but certainly very musical. You know, like I said, it's ironic that this is so musical given the fact I've used a typewriter keyboard to play stuff in, but it worked. I mean, it's a combination of, I guess, the libraries being of a super high quality. You know, the Native Instruments products are fantastic. But it's also having the time and the energy and the focus on trying to make something that feels musically interesting. And that the transitions actually make sense. You know, they're not for show. Let's just take that section there as an example. Look at the way the cellos rise up towards the next section of the vocal.
I'm trying hard not to reminisce.
notice every now and again there are wind chimes just to create nice smooth transitions.
It was so real. Baby, it's time to move your game on. It's such a shame. You had me shook. I was just a number in your little.
Let's come
It's such a
over here.
shame. I'm trying hard not to reminisce.
Just going to go forward.
It's such a shame. It's such a shame. It's such a shame. It's such a shame. It's such.
So here we have a section at the end. It's what we would call an ad-lib. It's where the lyrics are kind of being performed by the singer off the top of their head, and they just come out with ideas. And this turned out to be actually almost like a brand new hook. And this is fantastic. I love this section. It brings a whole new energy and also kind of sums up the story. You know, the story in the song is really important. You've got to listen to the lyrics and it makes sense. It's a great, great piece of lyric writing and storytelling. And so this is really just to embellish stuff and add, you know, final kind of drama and resolve it and close the story. So listen again.
It's such a shame. It's such a shame. It's such a shame. It's such a shame.
And for me, it's the pause. You can see I chopped out these drum elements just to add extra emphasis to certain parts. And it's adding a real sense of extra. It's a really simple change, but it does make a big difference. And that keeps going. And then there's a second round here.
Little black book, 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 little black book. It's such a shame.
So that's it. Now, this is a simple track. It doesn't have any kind of showboating snare fills or breakdowns or anything. It consistently kind of rolls from beginning to end. So there's no point in me trying to show you any of those sections because they just don't exist. You know, this is literally a track where there is a kind of verse chorus kind of vibe, and then you've got your ad-libs at the end, and you know it works really well. So that's that in terms of the arrangement. So we've gone through the drum elements, we've gone through the musical elements. Now let's take a look at the vocals, and there's a fair collection of these, okay? And these would have been recorded at different times. So the original take is over here, and this is running through a fair degree of processing, and I'm going to show you what we've got going on here. Let me take it back to the beginning. I'm going to introduce some of the musical elements at the same time, not all of them. Let's put the bass on. Let's put the keys on. And let's also, maybe let's bring some of these others. Oh, there's a couple of sweeps I forgot to mention. They're over here. Just add some new textures, but let's just focus on these vocals. And here we go. And I forgot to solo the vocal.
Such a shame. You're not quite the man that you say you are. I can't believe that you were lying in my bed only just last night, holding me so tight.
So let's take a look at what's going on here. One thing you may notice is that there is an echo, a delay between the phrases, and that's deliberate. So I've worked this so that you only hear it in the gaps. Obviously, it's subtly there when the vocal is performing because I didn't want to flood the vocal with echoes all over the place. Now, what I'm using for my kind of core processing of the dynamics is this plugin. This is Mixbox from IK Multimedia, and I do love this thing. This is a simplified 1176 followed by a simplified LA2A. So these are emulations of the classic hardware. The first one is on really fast attack and release, and it's just being used to kind of hit those transients and bring them under control. Then the 2A is being used to kind of smooth out the performance. So these are both working, and I'll show you these now.
Oh, yeah. It's such a shame. You're not quite the man that you say you are.
So for me, that's adding this kind of nice kind of professional level to everything. The next thing that I did was to add a vocal doubler, and this is something from Isotope. And the reason for this is because I wanted it to sound kind of R&B. And when I say that, it's like the Americans have often had a really great ability to work with a great vocal and just to add this kind of richness to it. And so this is almost like having a double track of the vocal, but very subtle. And it adds a slight amount of kind of stereo width to the sound. So that's in there for that. Now here's that delay. So I was talking about the delay working in the gaps, and that's because it's a ducking delay. So this is the envelope follower ducking on Arturia's amazing delay eternity delay unit. And so this is another plugin. And this is literally, as I said, you hear the delays in the gaps more than when the vocal is playing. So that's a very important part of that. Then I've got it running through a Portec EQ and emulation. This is from IK Multimedia. I'm boosting the lows here just to warm it up. And then I'm also adding some highs at 12K. So that's being used to add a kind of sheen, professional kind of sheen to the vocal. Don't ask me why I've got two utilities in a row. I have no idea. It may be that I was making final adjustments, and sometimes I prefer to make those adjustments on the utility plugin and use the numbers, which means that if I want to copy the same level of volume increase or decrease on another channel, I can copy over the utility and I can know for sure that the dB gain or increase or decrease is going to be identical. All right, so it's a safety net. So that's that. There is a small amount of send signal going to a reverb over here. The reverb is interestingly, it's the MDEX, which is a very primitive Korg, old school kind of reverb. It's a plate, but I used to love these kind of devices way back when I used to use hardware. And another thing that I wanted to do with this track was to make it feel like it was made on hardware, and to almost to work in a way that I used to work on hardware, which is a really important thing, I think. And that contributes to the overall vibe. So the lyrics, the vocals are here. It's an incredible performance. I'm sure you'd agree. The reason why there are two identical tracks, essentially, for the same vocal is because there was an overlap. And so I couldn't have this vocal on the same set of processes here on this track because they would cut short. Okay, so I copied over the settings from one track to another. And let's just have a listen. This is going to be that section there. So we need that overlap. And then also you just heard the backing vocals. So these were recorded on a separate session by Kaylee.
Shame, shook, book, shame.
They're really rich. And this is the processing, slightly different to the lead. Also, you'll notice that there's a delay, and that's over here. So let's take a look at that. The delay has got some phasing on there. So there's some modulation. So this is Replica from Native Instruments, which is a great delay.
Shook.
Yeah, here's the other backing vocal.
It's such a shame. I've got to let go.
So it's a low harmony. And when in with the other vocals,
It's such a shame.
so we've got this really lush, warm and rich set of vocals and certain emphasis on certain phrases coming through in the performance. So we're heading towards the end. I'm going to show you these sweeps. And the reason for this is because we've got a repeat of a set of lyrics. I wanted something musically to be different. And of course, we've got backing vocals that embellish that too. And then here's another synth. So the first one is Falcon from UVI. That's Lonely Pad. The second one is called Triton. And this one is Stereo Res Sweep. So these are once again subtle background textures.
Such a shame. Little black book, little black book, little black book, little black book.
So let's take a look at the master setup, because this is something that I've mastered myself. And what I've got is the AMEC here as a summing plugin. So it's taking all of those individual tracks and summing them together with an analog flavor. I've got the Plugin Alliance BX Townhouse Bus Compressor. And this, I love the sound of this thing. So that's being used to gel things together. I've also then got this Soma, which is a mastering EQ. Okay. Now, a couple of things to point out on here. I'm doing a low cut, so the high pass filter here at 25 hertz. So just to take away maybe any of the rumble that's down below. I'm boosting at 100 over here, so 100 hertz, that's increasing the bass. Then what have I got? A slight cut at 2K, and then I've got an increase at 12K. So this is my mastering EQ. And then I've got, interestingly, 2 mastering processors, and I'll tell you about what happened here. This is a recent addition to the Plugin Alliance collection. It's the Master Desk True Peak. And this is a really great kind of all-in-one mastering plugin. It's got some interesting features, things like resonance filters here, which are really quite useful. Sometimes things kind of jump out a bit too much. And I felt at 315 hertz, there was something too present there. So I've engaged this. But also, it's quite simple. Yeah, you push your volume up into your limiter, and that's pretty much it. And you just have to be wary of the amount of reduction that's going on here. Equally, it's got a de-esser, and quite often when you're doing mastering, de-essing can be very, very useful. So it takes away, some of the aggressive, harsh, sibilants and some of the higher frequencies. So that was really useful. So, just one more thing I wanted to point out. On the Soma, I used the stereo width control here. So that's increased, so 114%. Mono Maker, I did everything below 71 hertz as mono. So that was that. But then I felt somehow that I wasn't getting the level that I wanted. I'm not sure why. So then I placed another limiter on top here, which is the BX limiter True Peak, which I love. It's another great limiter. In fact, the previous plugin does have an element of this in there, but I just wanted to crank it up a bit more. So I took the level up a bit higher here. But this is certainly by no means a super loud master compared to some of the others out there. I wanted to create a more kind of human, organic feel to it. So I wanted it somewhere to be modern, but not too modern, if you get me. So that's it. That's the song. It's called Such a Shame. It's Kaylee Gibson and me, Danny J. Lewis. This is available now in extended formats exclusively at tracksource.com. It's also available in a radio edit on streaming platforms everywhere. So if you have any questions, please put them down below. I'm really busy. It's very difficult even for me to make these videos these days, but I will try to respond if you do have any questions. And in the meantime, please show your support. And thanks to everybody supporting the release so far.